Hey guys, Antonio here with another video on crucial conversations, and today we are going to be talking about staying in dialogue when you get emotional, like anger, sadness, any of that. Before we get started, guys, click that subscribe button down below, follow along with more videos like this, sent straight to your inbox every single week. So this is going to be a good one, guys. There's a lot of information here. Stay tuned, take notes if you can. Pay attention to all the highlights that are going to come on the screen because this is very important. So, when something happens, you create the emotions that come out of it, right? Someone may say something. That doesn't necessarily create the emotions. You take what happens and then you create the emotions yourself. The emotions aren't created by someone else. So realize that fact, that when someone says something to you in a crucial conversation and it makes you feel a certain way in the end, it's because there was that middle step where you made it feel that way. You felt that way from what the other person said, not simply what the other person said. So here's the process, how it works. First, you see and you hear things, okay? You see and hear the situation. Then you come up with the story based off of what you saw and heard and your whole basis of the situation, right? Anything that you saw and heard previously adds up to giving you a story. You come up with this story. Then you feel something based off of your perception of the story. And then you, step 4, act. Okay? So, remember, see and hear, tell a story, you feel, and then you act. Keep that process in mind because we're going to hack this process right now to figure out how you can change the way you feel based off of what someone else says. We create a story and that adds meaning to what we just observed. Okay? So, like I said before, someone says something, we feel a certain way, and what happens is we tell a story. The story that we tell adds our meaning behind the story, and that's how we perceive the entire thing. Okay? So we end up telling the stories ourselves. That's something that you need to realize. We came up with this story. It may seem automatic, right? The first time I heard this, I thought, this is automatic if it's something that happens in the moment, right? But have you ever told a story to a friend, and then when you told a story to a friend and heard your friend's point of view, that might have changed the way you viewed the story and then changed the way you felt? So when you think about it, the way you change the story, it may have changed previously in the past due to outside circumstances. Now today you're going to take control of that story and change it for yourself. When you change it for yourself, then you now have control of the way you feel. And if you have control of the way you feel, you have control of the way you act. And that's how you master these crucial conversations. The best people that do it slow this whole process down, break it up into parts, and start figuring out their path to action, how we get to this step, by breaking down all of these parts. So, the first thing is before we start to act, notice your behavior. Are you being silent or are you being violent? Okay? That's very, very important. Remember, silence and violence are the two things that are signs that the conversation has gone crucial. So if you are acting silent or violent yourself, you need to have the mental awareness to realize that. That means that the conversation has gone crucial, especially on your end. Next thing is get in touch with the feelings. Ask yourself, what are the emotions that are encouraging me to act this way? Why am I yelling at the other person? Why am I telling someone to do something forcefully? Why am I acting quiet? Right? When you ask yourself these questions, you try to find the emotions that are behind it. Okay. Now that you have the emotions readily available, next step is you analyze the stories. So you ask yourself, what story is creating these emotions that I'm feeling? So we went here, now we broke back to feeling, now we're back to the story. What is the story that we told that made our emotions to feel this way? Okay? So you ask yourself, you're trying to figure out, okay, what is this story that I started making up to myself? X happened, then Y happened, and now I feel like this. When you find out what X and Y are, now you can get back to the facts, okay? You came up with a story, and the problem is that sometimes you may mistake the story for the facts. So when you get back to the facts, you say, what evidence do I have to support this story? What are the true things that happened that actually make this story true? And not something of my perception that I made up based off of my limited piece of the conversation, right? Remember, we don't have all the information in the shared pool of meaning. So what evidence do I have to support this? The whole purpose of this is to challenge the emotions you are feeling and to make you realize that there's a difference, that the stories that you made are completely different than facts, and you need to bring it back to the facts and not from the story. We get blinded and clouded by the story, but the facts are what really should be determining the whole thing. That's how you take it from a very emotional thing to a logical thing and get through this 4-step process. So, 3 normal stories that we usually come up with, guys. First is the victim story, and that's when you're like, oh, it's not my fault. A victim story is basically when you ignore your role in the conversation. You ignore anything that you possibly could have done to get to that point where the crucial conversation became crucial. You may have been passive aggressive, and that might have caused someone to act in a certain way, right? You don't know what happened, but you're ignoring any possibility of your role. The way you overcome a victim story is by asking yourself, am I pretending to not notice anything that's part of my role in this problem? Have I caused anything to make this become partially my fault? And like I mentioned, guys, every problem is normally at least 1% one person's fault and X% someone else's fault, right? You need to find out what's your fault and apologize for it and figure out how you can make up for that. Okay? So first step is for figuring out the victim story is asking yourself that question, am I pretending to not notice my role in the problem? Next story we have, the villain story. And this is when you say, it's all your fault. You blame it on someone else. You tend to overemphasize the other person's fault. Like I said, it's when you overemphasize the other person's fault and try to minimize your fault. The one thing that you can do to overcome the villain story is ask yourself, why would a reasonable or rational human do this, right? Most people are good. Most people have the belief that they're not trying to hurt other people, that they have good intentions. Why would a normal person do what they did? Why would they act in that way? Is there something that you could have done that have caused that? I don't know. That's for you to find out. The third story is when you are helpless, okay? And that's when you say, I've done everything I can do. There's nothing else I can do. Is that you try to convince yourself that nothing can be done in order to justify an action you are about to take, right? You are watching TV because you applied to a job and you're just waiting to hear back instead of doing something to try to become better for the job. That's being helpless when you're watching TV and saying that you can't do anything to get the job, right? You can do something. There's always something you can do. There's always something in your power. You need to find that. And that's the question you need to ask is, what do I want from this situation? What do I want from this conversation specifically? And what would I do to get those results? Ask yourself, and when you ask yourself that question, it causes your mind to be creative and come up with reasons on how you can be creative for those results. I hope at the end of this chapter, you will go from telling yourself very negative stories or stories that have polluted perceptions of the situation, very selfish perception of the situation, and now you take it to have very useful stories, ones that are positive, and helps you take healthy actions from the story. Find win-win solutions for both sides of the conversation. Not just yourself, not just for the other person, but for both sides. So, there's a lot here. I'm going to summarize real quick. What ends up happening is we create the emotions from stories. There's 4 steps that happen. We see and hear the conversation. We tell the story right afterwards. We feel from the story. And then we act based off of the story and the feelings we have. We need to change the story ourselves to change the way we feel. So first, we need to realize how we're acting. Then from our actions, we can break it down to what emotions that we need to change. Third is that we need to analyze the stories that come from the emotions. And then fourth is get straight back to the facts from the stories. Realize what the facts are. When we know what the facts are, then we can improve ourselves. Next, there's 3 stories that we usually make up. First is being a victim, and that's when you say it's not my fault. Then is being a villain, and that's when you say it's all your fault. And then next is being helpless, and that's when you say there's nothing else to do. And in all of those cases, you have to ask questions that make you realize what you can do and what you might have done to cause a situation. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video on staying in dialogue when you were emotional. Great chapter, a lot of information here. This chapter itself has helped me a lot. So guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please give me a thumbs up and share it with at least one friend that you think could use this information. I know tons of people that can. That's why I'm making them for you. Please share, guys. I'm going to leave a link in the description down below for you to purchase a copy of this book on Amazon. Guys, check me out on Patreon. I work very hard for these videos. I appreciate if I can get $1 donation. If that's too much, that's okay. I'll still make the videos for you guys, but anything helps. Guys, please check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I post Instagram stories every single day giving you guys tips on how you can improve your daily life. And guys, as always, remember that a chapter a day allows for success to make way. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.